We've got 4 panellists here from various stages of new businesses, so hopefully you know them all, but if I can just from left to right, Dan from Fox I Drew, Simon from Team Junkfish, Frank Arnott, who is Frank stand up.
Really?
Frank is only 27.
Yeah. That's what happens when you start your own business, you get all the time.
And so I've not met, this is Sherry Skillington.
Steve is only 30.
So Tony, I'll hand over to you to sort of manage this question and answer session. So
With this chair around here, then so I'm not standing up there talking down to you as if it's question time. So I've just been writing some notes, and then I'm hosting this, and my first question was going to be for you to all introduce yourselves and what your companies did. But do you want to perhaps kind of start off just talking about kind of how your companies got started and sort of what was your kind of why and that idea?
Yeah, I'll start with that. Like Steve said, we were a company formed from Dare to Be Digital in 2014, so nearly 2 years to the day since we formalised. We were given £30,000 worth of funding after Dare as a prize for doing well, and that is really the why of it. We decided to take the money. We wanted to start a business, and that is, the money was the reason why we were able to do that. We wouldn't have done it otherwise. So.
Basically, the team Junkfish joined together in our 3rd year in the personal project module. Essentially, 10 of us got together, decided we wanted to do our own brief, which is kind of where you just make up what you want to do, and that essentially went quite well for us. We ended up doing Samsung Student Developer Challenge, got a prize from that, entered a bunch of other competitions, kind of did okay in them as well essentially, and turned out one of the people in our team, essentially their family was a business angel or an SEIS investor, and they offered us the opportunity to start a company. And we took it. That was basically it. The why is something that I would admit we've struggled with in future projects, because you kind of come out straight away, you've got this opportunity, you go like, yeah, I'm going to do it, because not many people get that opportunity and you don't want to say no. So you kind of do your first project, it goes all right, but then you end up doing a second project and you're kind of like, why are we doing this? We have to kind of solve that problem again. So I would say that's how we got started, and it's not the perfect start, but it's going all right.
I'm not 27, I'm 45 in a couple of weeks' time, and I was making games for other people for 20 years pretty much before I started Stormcloud. The why did I start? I started because I hate people telling me what to do. And I want to do what I wanted, and I honestly thought I could do a better job making games I want to make, and also if I made a game that's successful, I want more of the reward from it as opposed to just the salary that I would get working for somebody else. So that was my why, to do what I want, make the games I want, and if I'm successful, get a better reward for it.
We also came out the Dare to Be Digital competition last year. Our why for continuing was basically, I think it's to do with we really enjoyed working with each other, I hope. And we wanted to continue the project and work on future projects with each other really, but that's where we've kind of, the reason why for us.
So have any of you kind of sat down and then like kind of planned out the company? It sounds like a few, because it's come out of Dare, it's been okay, there's been this opportunity presented to us, or like Frank, did you kind of sit down and like actually kind of plan out like, okay, this is my business plan, these are the targets I'm going to aim for, this is my 3-year plan, that kind of thing?
3 years? You can't plan 3 years ahead in the games industry. I struggle to plan to the end of the year. We're in almost September now. I did have a plan actually, and actually before I started Stormcloud, I was actually planning how could I get this started, how I was working for someone, how could I start my own, looking at different avenues, speaking to people in my network that ran their own business, asking how they got started. But honestly, all that planning, none of that went the way that was written down, it all went in a completely different direction. So I think you do need the plan, but
So
I don't think it's going to.
did you find the plan helpful then, even though?
I think it's a helpful exercise in realising that some of the stuff has been brought up already. You know, how much money we're going to need, how I'm going to pay for this, who do I need to employ. Or actually, one of the points was made earlier. I employ very few people. Most people work for me as contractors. So at the end of a project, I can downsize, and then if I get another project, I can upsize again. Because carrying the cost of an employee would just eat all the profits you would you potentially make. And I think it's better to kind of use a contractor model and scale down. And not only that, but to bring in the best people for the job, you know, so we bring in the best animator. Maybe another project doesn't need an animator, so why am I paying him? But let's pay a contractor maybe a slightly higher amount each day that they work. But at the end of the project, you can shake hands legitimately and say, thanks for all your hard work. And you know, I don't need you anymore, and you don't incur that cost. So I think the plan was good in terms of it let me work out what we'd need, and in terms of cash, what we need in terms of people, but in terms of the work I got in and things I did, it's been a little bit more freeform, to be honest, you know. I will also add one of the things that Steve said at the start, that this has been the hardest 4 years of my life running a business, and I've got more grey hair now than I had at the start of it. It's very difficult, so I don't think Steve's been negative, I think he's been very realistic. So.
And what about you? Have you kind of what sort of form of planning had you kind of got going into this?
We basically, well, I've read pretty much the books that you've put up essentially at the start when we did it, because I was the one who got the responsibility of doing the kind of business
You're
side.
the business guy.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's like I was in game design, production management, and that's not really business development or anything like that. So you end up, but I was the closest essentially, so I got that responsibility and ended up kind of devouring your kind of lean startup books and stuff like that. So basically the business canvas and things, we actually did some of that. We did a lot of it with our first project. We were like, okay, so these types of games are popular, we know these customers exist. We polled Scottish Games, which is like a kind of collection of Scottish games developers and a website. So we kind of polled them about what types of games we played, whether they'd be interested in the concept, and kind of took it from there. And that was the kind of main plan that we did. So we knew like who we were going to sell to, basically a concept we thought they would like, and then it was about like, we want to be on Steam, so we're going through Greenlight. And that was about as far as it got before we actually had to just start, because that was the end of uni and things had to start turning.
We had no plan. So, really, we did the old school there where it was like a team of 5 during 7 weeks, rather than the one now where it's year long. And we were strangers. We formed through the internet. So I went from meeting people for the first time and developing a game with them over 2 months to each owning an equal stake in a company, which was a terrible idea. It was the worst mistake we could have made at the time. Well, no, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't a terrible mistake, but it was just kind of indicative of like, if we sat down and thought about what we wanted to do for the next year, then we maybe all wouldn't have been like equal partners in the company. We would have been a bit more realistic about who was really going to take the lead on certain things and things like that. But we kind of we finished there on the Sunday, and I think we set up the company on the Monday. So it was a little bit intense. And not very much thought went into it, really. In retrospect, it would be a good idea.
Is that something that you think that maybe is like, having come through like that kind of DARE process, do you think like the sort of university form teams should maybe take more time on, or that there's more support that could be there for that?
In terms of
like
when to start a business?
Well, in terms of like the kind of planning aspect of it, so it's like, so you kind of became the business guy.
We get one module at the end of
background,
4th year, essentially. So like right at the end they kind of go, oh, this is how you start a business, and kind of throw a module at you. But it's not, by that point we knew we were going to do it. Like we got the opportunity, we kind of signed up, and then it was like, oh, you have to do all this stuff. And it wasn't like I knew like about tax, about payrolls, about all those sorts of things, and like there's nowhere that really teaches you about that. And I started in 2009, and I was saying to kind of Jamie earlier that the university, like, kind of bless its heart, so I think it is behind the times a lot of the time. It's just reacting to what it was. So it was still in the mode of like, you'll probably join a big company, there's not really a route to market for independent studios. So it's kind of, you need to specialise, you need to kind of have a core skill set where you can work within a big team where they'll already be a businessman. So at that point it just wasn't set up right, and I think it would be very hard to actually get a skill set in a uni which is completely like on the bleeding edge of what the industry actually is. So
Because they're very slow,
Yeah.
you know, it's not their fault, but they're very slow and there's a lot of red tape and they move, you know, to take a long time to change direction basically. So it's just the nature of the beast really.
For us, when we came out, it was about sitting down and realising kind of, okay, we want to set up a company, so what are the first questions that come to our mind? We got a lot of like advice, basically, what you were saying about things being on like written down, so we knew straight, like I think we were quite honest with each other, and that's why I think it works as well, because straight off the bat we were like, okay, what do we do if a shareholder wants to leave? How much shares are we getting each? Is it equal shares? They're like awkward questions that seem like awkward, but it's, you have to think these people are your friends, but ultimately it's like a business, and it's kind of cutthroat like that, but ultimately, you know, you are a business and you need to think of the business. And like you were saying, you don't know who these people might be in like 2 years' time. People's plans change, so we sat down and we spoke about what's everyone's plans, what do people want to do. We were kind of in like a sticky situation because we were like most of us were second year of uni, and so most of us still wanted to finish uni. I mean, we could have, that's the thing, like with businesses, I think there's many routes as well. We could have easily dropped uni, set up the company, you know, took a part-time job at the weekend at Tesco, got a 3-bedroom flat and shared the bills between all of us. But, you know, everybody's different, companies want to do different stuff. We like working with each other, but we all have different goals as well within the company. So that's kind of where we started. That's how we started our planning. And then from then we got, okay, now we want to set up the company. We weren't like rushing about it or anything, like we took our time, and we didn't want to make too much mistakes. We still did make mistakes obviously, but more finding out advice from people. So how do we go about doing this? And that's really us, and setting up, don't get me wrong, we're still trying to get like our shit together, but you know, like for the majority we're usually quite good. We sat down and said, okay, like we're really crap at business stuff, we're all developers, so how are we going to fix this basically? We did research into like roles, because for one person to take on all the business roles is just so overwhelming. So it was basically, we sat down, we did some research, and we divided roles, like, so one person's like the CFO, and we made that person who is based into their skill set, so that's the person who's really good at money. You know, if I was like the CFO, like, I swear things would go to crap. But, and then, you know, we would also have, I mean, for us this works to an extent, and another thing is you just have to be honest with your team members as well. Like if they're not doing their shit, you have to be like, why aren't you like at this event? You're the PR person, like do this. Why isn't stuff getting posted to website? Like do your shit, you know. So that's kind of like our plan, really.
Glad to work for you.
So you talked about, so you'd got your award money from Dare, and you'd found a rich family member that is an IS investor. Have you tried to find any other sources of funds, or like Frank, do you want to maybe talk about how you kind of helped fund? I know it's maybe a slightly delicate.
No, not at all.
area,
I put more money into it at the start, but I wouldn't have did that unless I can find some other money too. So we got the Stormcloud got prototype funding through Abertay, which is now sort of the UK Games Fund to all intents and purposes. They gave us some money, and that sort of de-risked me putting my money in, but not by much, because when it's your own money you're spending, you know, it becomes a lot more real. So yeah, it's a mixture of my money and sort of grants and work for hire as well. So we did quite a lot of work for hire. The ultimate goal was to do original IP and do the stuff we want to do, but it's really hard. The biggest challenge you'll find still 4 years later is finding money, obviously. So we still do work for hire to balance it out. And it is a huge risk. When you put your own money in, it becomes a whole lot more real, especially because I'm that thing of having a mortgage, 2 kids, and it's kind of I've got to pay my bills every month, or to take the house back. And actually, it reached that point at one point where I had no money in my account to pay the mortgage at the end of the month. But fortunately, it came good. So, but I wouldn't.
It's all right, bring it all down now. So
I wouldn't take that risk again. But that's the risk I took to sign our PS4 project actually, and I wouldn't do that again. So it's tough. So.
What about
So we got like a little bit of money from Dare, for like being one of the winners. But we mostly looked into other competitions as well. So we applied for the Ford Mobility competition. We got money from that. So that's how like we've mostly got our money. We got so most of the things I'll tell you about like where we've got funding is like student. So I'm kind of sorry for the people who are maybe not students. We applied to Converse Challenge. We didn't get theirs, but they're just somewhere you can apply. And they're really good because all you have to do is set up an application. You can you can go to business surgeries over the summer. So you speak with lawyers, all free, like accountants. They just give free advice, finance, marketing, everything. And it's 1-on-1 for like a whole day. They also make you pitch in front of like hundreds of people, and you've got like 60 seconds to sell yourself. I didn't have to do that, thankfully. And then you can also get money at the end of it if you are selected as the winner. I think they give maybe like they change their prices, and sometimes they give out more. I've heard. Around maybe like 32,000, can range up to like 40-something thousand, but they do 3 different awards. So they do the Converse Challenge itself, they do a kind of social thing for like if you're doing like charities and like environment kind of stuff, and they also do another one, it's a Kickstarter one as well. Other places for funding is Santander. They do an award for students again. You can go through them and you can get. We've had different monies from Santander, so it's like 500 here, 500 there, 500 here, and it's just like gets so confusing. But they're quite good, and all it is a business plan, and that's another thing. Business plans are really good for funding as well. It's good for investors. It's good for the competitions like this, like Converse Challenge. In the end, you just submit a business plan as well. What else? There's also SIE, which is for students again. They do like competitions, which is like they're every few months, and I think it's just ideas really, and they pick winners from it as well. You pitch it, and then there's obviously the UK Games Fund as well. There's also another one if you're working on HTC Vive. It's like called the Accelerator or something. I haven't looked too much into it, but I think what they're doing is they're supporting people who are making like VR projects, and they'll pay. They'll give you funding. They'll give you an office. Of course, you need to move to wherever their office is. But it seems pretty good. I haven't looked too much into it though. So, and there's another one as well. I'm not sure if this one is just for students though. So you'd have to check that out. It's called Scottish Edge. I don't know too much about it, but
It's not just for students.
Is it not? Yeah, okay, that's good then. There's that one as well. But I don't know too much about that either. So that's not good.
Yeah, there's a few different categories of Scottish Edge.
Yeah.
Stuff,
and they come like again and again, so it's not like it's a 1-year thing or anything.
Yeah, we won one of those. That's
Yeah.
how we got some of our money, was through that. We won a Young Edge award.
Mm.
But the Scottish Edge is quite a tricky one for games. There's only a handful of games they've actually funded. They tend to need to be on a new platform, so you perhaps VR, or using some interesting other technologies or things. They're quite picky.
Yeah, they seem to be quite big into their kind of disruption
Yeah.
You've got to kind of find a way of. So that's what I've found with like some of the funding stuff is you've got to kind of find a way of taking what you want to do and then angling it
Yeah.
towards
Yes. Very much so.
what the fund is wanting to pay for.
Yeah, that's what we did with Ford as well. It's like they wanted us to make like a game, but we kind of just took our Self Nation game and then like just took the code and applied it to like what they wanted really.
It's really hard to make find money to just make a game that you want to make without
Yeah.
having to be beholden to anyone or have to change it to fit a
Yeah.
publisher or something like that.
Or have
That is very rare. Like that very rarely happens.
Yeah.
Unless it's your own.
Normally, well, I say like that was the first part of us, but obviously since then we're trying to more establish like business relationships So go to Sony, Oculus, like Vive, Steam, those sorts of people who actually have influence within the industry and can support us on a like marketing level as well. So we're essentially looking more for like traditional publisher relationship than I say like just a handout, shall we say, like of so much money, because it's like that'll keep us going for a couple of months, whatever. But if you're looking to grow, you need to use that to essentially establish your business in someone's mind as someone who can solve a problem for them or who they can work with. So that's what we were trying to do just now. So yeah, just kind of a bunch of irons in the fire with those sorts of people, bunch of plans that we should work on more, but like occasionally kind of we get caught up in actually like making the game rather than talking to a publisher or something. But yeah, it's just trying to strike that balance where you've got like they know who you are, they know what you can do, and you are trying to obviously say like this game we're making will be great for touch controls for Oculus because the control system works like this and you need a guy who does that, and we'll be that guy. Like, you might want to make a game that's like your cherished baby, but ultimately you'll have to, like you say, compromise and just be like, it can work on touch controls and they'll give us 50 grand to do it. So that's what we're gonna do, you know? So, yeah.
Cool. So shortly we're going to open it up to sort of a Q&A from the audience, so if you can start thinking of questions, that would be good. But so in the meantime, I think maybe if you could just kind of go around one at a time and sort of say what you think is like the sort of biggest success, what you did well right from the start, and kind of what you think is the thing that you as a company kind of well, I mean, you don't have to go in any particular order, and also just what you wish you'd kind of known at the start that kind of would have saved you a lot of heartache. And
the first mistake we did is we made everyone a director, which has issues with like bank accounts straight away, because some bank places only allow you to have like 2 directors and such like that, so you then have to be less fussy. So then we then had to like resign all those directors, and so it's just good to have. What I've heard is also as investors, like 6 directors looks really bad. So you should only have really the person who's mostly working on the business stuff as your directors. I think a lot of people say like, oh, director's shiny, like it looks really good. Of course it does, but in the end you have to remember it's a responsibility, it's a role, and you also need to look at the cons of being a director as well, because there are some pretty big cons as well. So yeah, just like check that stuff out. That was the mistake we made. I've got a list because it's long. Some like maybe non-business stuff is playtest in-house weekly. With the whole team, we've spent like maybe a couple months when all team members weren't seeing the game, and then they would see it and be like, what the fuck is this? Like, you know, so it's quite good to just keep, now we've started to really do that, and I think it's really paying off, and we find more bugs like that way, so it's this helpful. It's not maybe just me, it's playtesting, and then you see, you know, more people's opinions to the design as well, especially. The thing I mentioned about the roles, I think, has really helped us, especially making sure people's right skill sets are in the right place. Definitely do that. I think that's my big thing. Yeah. Like research your company name when you're like coming up with it. I've seen a lot of like companies who come up with names and they're like, yeah, I love it, and then I Google their name and I can't find them at all.
Naming stuff's hard.
Yeah,
I know companies that have taken literal like half a year to come up with the name.
Oh yeah, we did. So, so make sure you research it and see what comes up, because maybe unless you get really big, it might, you might never find you, and you want people to be able to find you straight away when they Google you. Just things like, for us, we used to have massive meetings, like massive meetings. I mean, like 3-hour-long meetings, and you'd have like 100 topics, and then at the end of it was like, okay, so what was it? Like, what did we actually talk about? What was the actual outcome of that meeting? So we try to keep our meetings now really short. We try to aim for 30 minutes, that usually turn into like an hour and a third, like, or an hour and 30 minutes, but we're still trying to aim for the 30, which is usually good. And then you then come out of that meeting knowing, well, that meeting was only about that one thing, or it was about a couple of topics and not 100, and you're not overwhelmed, you know, you've broke everything down really. Yeah, like, oh yeah, and another thing, there's so much business events. There's no excuse to not really learn about business, because even tomorrow there's a business event on the Science Centre in Glasgow, and it's called Ventures Fest Scotland, and it's just loads of workshops the whole entire day, about pitching, finance, funding, like everything basically. But yeah, no, that's usually like my main tips. Oh yeah, and some really obvious stuff that we made like mistakes, and now I'm like, were you such an idiot back then? But is we didn't research our market audience when we made Selfie Nation, so that was a big mistake. We didn't research competitors, which you should definitely do. We underestimate how long something takes all the time, which we're still trying to work on to do well. You need to kind of account for, you know, mistakes that are things that are going to get in the way of those meeting those deadlines. Like right now, we're having the issue of like trying to set up a bank account, and just stupid reasons always happens, you know, and it's messing with our deadline for Selfie Nation because we're trying to connect microtransactions to it, and it's like microtransactions trying to connect, but there's no business account to connect to it, and it's just delaying Selfie Nation even more because of it. But yeah, that's really like, definitely like my advice is the main thing. I think worked well for us is the roles. We still try to get it half right, but I really like, that's the thing I like about us. And honestly, just being honest with your team members. Like when we, I think first started, we were on eggshells around each other, like trying to tiptoe around each other's feelings, but now it's kind of a case of, you know what, we're not doing this good enough, we need to do this better. So just being kind of upfront about stuff, really. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else? No.
Said it all. I think for me it's probably different to you guys because I'm ancient, but I think for me that I've waited probably too long to be honest. But you know, after making games for 20 years, making games is almost the easy part. You know, I can't accurately tell how long someone's going to take. I don't always get it right, but you know that I know I can make the game. So making the game's almost like fitting a boiler. It's like my trade in it. So that part's fine. I think also because I've been in this for so long, I built up a network of people who had also went out. Like you guys are all starting now, they went off, and some have been very successful and very rich now through games. And I'd be able to speak to them about how to do things, and I meet some of them quite often to say, hey, I'm a bit stuck, what do you think you should do? And they get advice, don't always take it. So I think by having somebody else pay for my education, if you like, in terms of making games, it's meant that when I come to make games for myself, it's easier. So I think Steve made a point earlier about maybe you should go work for somebody. I kind of feel that's true, actually. That would be my advice if, say, one of my kids wanted to get into the games industry, which they will never be allowed to do. I'd rather they started sniffing glue or something, you know. If they really, really want to do it, I would say go work for somebody for 3 years, you know. See how people make games, get somebody to pay you, and learn sort of conventions and all the rest of it, and don't get used to that money, save some of that money, because I think when you start a business you need a runway of cash. You need at least a year's cash if you start a business, as the games business, to get your first game out the door, find more work for hire, because you'll be doing work for hire, so you need a year's worth of money really. I didn't have that, by the way. I had about 6 months, so that's why I'm saying you probably need twice that. So I had experience, that helped. I had a network you could draw upon to get more work and to get advice, and a friend of mine has given me 2 projects at a good time, which has kind of saved my bacon, so that's been good. What else? I think be honest with yourself, be honest with the team, be honest with your clients. So if you can't do something, just say something you can't do it. So the first time I met Sony for the project we just released for them, for Brutal, they asked me what the game was, and I hadn't even thought about it, and I just said, I don't know what the game is. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. We chatted about video games and said, come back when you've got an idea. So the door was left open, but if you lie to people or promise things you can't deliver, you very quickly get found out. So I think be honest with your clients and with yourself. and actually probably the most important thing is the guys that I work with, and girls, get a good team around you, you know, and then they start to bring everybody up. I've got a really good team. I know I can rely on them, and I say that's the sort of things I did right. In terms of avoiding heartache, you won't. I think there will be heartache.
Maybe just
I've been in
accept
tears a
your
few times for this business, but sorry to admit it. So, and I'm sure it'll happen again. So, you know, it is tough, but I think it's worthwhile. But it is incredibly tough to do, especially once you start to have people you feel responsible for. You've got to pay every month, you know, and the more people you get, it quickly adds up. And you think about the amount of money you pay every month. Think, Christ, I need whatever, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pound a month to just keep my team in an office. It's really frightening sum of money to an individual. And then you start thinking, well, they've got kids and they've got mortgage, and you start to feel that responsibility. So it's definitely tough, I think. So.
What was the exact question?
So the exact question was one thing that you think went wrong. One thing that you think.
I don't think you said one thing.
One thing that went really well, probably. I would say that just our original concept was good, and the original people we had were good at making it. So I basically think we had a good team, and maybe the one thing that went wrong is that no one on that team was a business person or someone who didn't work on games as like what they do most of the time. So there should have been one person whose job it was to do the kind of, or one person who actually really wanted to be the person who was doing the why and the business stuff and all that. Like, we were all gamer people, and maybe that wasn't exactly right.
Our best thing was probably maintaining a decent network of contacts during the development of the game, even though it took so much longer than we thought, which helped us get featured when it finally came out. I'd say our biggest mistake was probably kind of echoing Frank's point of going to work in an industry. Being like 5 guys pretty much fresh out of uni, we had no idea how long anything took. And so we ran out of money towards the end, and we're okay now. But you know, it was, you don't want to run out of money just before you release a product. It does not help. Like, it does not help. It's demoralizing. The team basically has to kind of temporarily split while you get yourself back on your feet again and wait for the income to come in. And our game was much worse for it. You know, even though when we had money, it was probably better, and then it was like 2 or 3 months without money and without people being paid to work on it, and it ended up coming out worse than it was 3 months before when people were being paid to work on it. So that kind of thing of going and getting that experience and understanding how long things take and knowing your team and what they're capable of is really important. I wish we'd done that.
Cool. So kind of open it up to what I'll do is once the person's asked their question, I'll just repeat it so it picks up on the recorder. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Oh, Brian, right at the back, go on.
So one of the things that was mentioned at the start was about universities supporting business and helping students to kind of develop business skills. So I want to throw out to the panel, what could we do as academics to help to develop those business skills for students coming out of university?
So that's what does the panel think that universities can do to help students kind of coming out and starting up businesses in terms of their business skills?
Sherry's at university, she can answer that.
I think one of the problems for us is I'm the only designer on the team, so I'm the only person who gets the business module, and even then the business module isn't tailored towards games at all. It's just a business module, and it's just really for like business plans. And I find that business plans are very different, of course, per company as well. But I don't know, like GC has been quite good for supporting us, you know, like because we have the UHatch incubator, so we've had like a free office, so we don't have to pay for that course really. And like Brian and David are quite good at supporting us, you know.
You don't have to say that just because he's here.
Yeah. No, but for real, it's like they've been like kind of supporting us through this. So I guess if like I don't know if other unis have just as much support. I don't know. But yeah, no, like mostly just helping us on the business side more, I think. getting maybe someone that to help us. Yeah, I don't know.
Cause you've got your business courses, so introduce them to the games people earlier
Yeah.
and see if any of them are actually interested in running a games company as a business person, and then basically the games people can do what they wanted to do but actually have a partner. Maybe you do that already and that just didn't happen when I was there, but just get people who want to do the things do it
So
together.
actually just kind of like commingle like the business students with the...
So you could take them to a game jam and show them how games are actually made, and so that you could run a company full term, not quite 24 hours a day, but like that.
That's a good idea.
It's interesting actually that you bring that. So I was at a talk earlier in the month where like an investor was talking about that sort of stuff and was saying like, so it was the thing of like, okay, like kind of 3 founders or whatever, and one of them needs to be the business person, and if no one on your team is that business person, maybe find a business student and just say, look, we've got this kind of company, you've just been learning how to run a business.
I should say, I don't think I was like completely terrible at it. I just kind of like, yeah, it was like something I ended up doing rather than like
Yeah.
at the start of uni. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to run a business when I leave. That was like I was like, oh, I'm going to be lead designer in some big company when I leave, you know, that kind of dream. But and also about your director's point, always have an odd number was some of the best advice I got, because then you can't have a tie.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Cool.
There's also like I've heard of some universities doing you know, they set up teams and then they make the teams like pitch the point, and depending on how well they pitch it, they then get like an investment, like, you know, it's like fake, and then based on that investment they have to then make their project based on like all the money they have, so the people they can pay and stuff like that, and that's quite good, I think.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, sure.
Hiya. I was just wondering if there's any benefit to holding off starting a company, such as like pre-startup funding.
So yes, that's if you think there's any benefit to kind of holding off, like for example, you can get pre-startup funding or anything else.
So what? Not starting until you have the funding? Is that what you're saying?
So like yeah, so like, is there any benefit to holding off completely forming the company, or is it better to just go straight in and then look for the funding?
I have heard of there is funding before you're a startup, but I don't know them really, so...
Sounds like an accountant question to me.
Yeah.
but not like that. If you're going to start working on stuff, who owns the IP?
Yeah.
If you're not a company, you've not got any agreement, and you're a coder and you've got an artist working with you, the artist and they can draw, and who owns that? That's not yours. And you can't start making a game with that, you know. Even when you start a company, there needs to be something where you need to be clear when intellectual property rights reside. Chances are that stuff's going to amount to nothing. But if that was the next Minecraft, then people would be crawling at the woodwork to say, hey, that was my concept, where's my 50% of it? So I guess you run those risks if you're going to do that kind of stuff and not formalise it in some way. So.
There was an open world dinosaur game. I'm sure they lost like their T-Rex because the artist took it with him when he left. So it's like stuff like
That's
that.
not what you want as a dinosaur game.
There's also like with the bank account, it's usually like free for the first like 18 months, depends on which bank you go with. So I guess it kind of might be better to get your like plan together first, then set up your bank account, I guess, and then that way you've got the most of your free time, maybe.
And as Dougie in that said, you know, that if you're going to be spending money, well, I guess you're going to be incurring costs, you're going to be paying yourself something amount of money. If you don't start a company and you can't use that for video games tax relief, you can't apply for certain UK Games Fund, you need to be a limited company. Scottish Enterprise, I think, only deal with limited companies in the games sector. I'm not quite sure about that, but certainly they prefer you to be.
The UK Games Fund, you can apply for it when you pre-company, and then if you get accepted, you formalise at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As well as the Scottish Edge, you need to be a company as well.
So no.
Start a company right now is what they're saying.
I think as soon as you got the
I
money.
think Steve would be able to
start.
answer if there is, basically.
Yeah, I think
there's nothing to prevent you actually developing your own product. You know, you go back to the sort of classic story of David Jones and Lemmings. Apparently, he developed in his bedroom, but at some point, you know, you have to actually formalise it, and it's just a question of when. I think Frank's point's a valid point as well. Who does the game belong to? It's a decision you have to make yourself in terms of. I was speaking to a guy 3 or 4 weeks ago at the Resonate Festival in Glasgow. He was demonstrating his game. He was at the Caird Hall at the Dare to Be Digital. He's not a company. He's quite literally, he works for a games company in Glasgow. He actually has developed that game as a hobby, but he's not got a formal legal structure yet. And that game was on display at Resonate and at the Dare to Be Digital. So anybody can look at that game and quite literally copy it. Is it protected? I suspect probably not.
Yeah, I think it's less about when you start your company and more about Sherry's point about who you start it with, who's a director, who has how many shares, who's going to control it, that kind of thing. The when isn't quite as important as the who, in my opinion.
And also about the shareholders and what happens when they leave as well. Because you can, I don't know so much about it, but you can get stuff. It's like they can leave in good faith and they leave in bad faith.
You can have good leavers and bad leavers. And again, you can do something very informal yourself, but at that time it might make sense to incur the cost and actually go to a good firm of lawyers, accepting that you might not need it. Hope you might not need it, but if it costs you £1,200 to actually get a good shareholders agreement, it might be the best £1,200 to spend.
Yeah, it would have been worth us doing that for sure. Like I can attest to that. Like I think. For a lot of companies, it would have been brilliant for us to have a shareholders agreement. I'm sure most of the companies here probably do. It's a very useful thing.
Cool. I think we've probably got time for one more. Have we got one? Yeah, sure, right in front.
Yeah, I wonder how you approach balancing creativity and feature creep, adding that extra special polish, and still profitability on the business side of things.
He said he was going to ask a hard question.
This is not an accounting question, but I would actually refer you back to the lean startup, minimum viable product, because there's a perception about it. People who are developing the game are probably the worst people to ask because it's their game, they're too close to it. Get it out to a sample audience, get them to look at it as a minimum viable product, get their feedback. So why add bells and whistles that your audience don't want?
I guess then the question, do the panel do that? Or do they keep working on it and release it as a full?
I'm pretty sure you were at one of our testing sessions. I've forgotten everyone's name from the testing session, but the answer is yes, we always test everything and it's always terrible until the end. So that's pretty much it. But it's like people outside, if you can point to someone who's not in the team and has no stake and they say something, it becomes less of a personal argument between say like Jamie's an audio guy, so he always noticed like every flaw with the audio and every like really perfectionist thing that he wants to get right. And then you've got the programmers who are like, oh, it's not functional, who cares? And it's really just like, did the person playing the game notice it? Do they care about it? And that's the real metric that you're trying to get to. So
there's a danger, because there's a danger if you do too much testing that you can go like you can pick up on one small person that someone said and then go totally crazy about it, and it adds another 3 months onto your project. Whereas it maybe that one person noticed it and it bugged them, but it wouldn't have bugged a single other person that you would have released it to, and that's kind of that can be dangerous as well.
Also, you have to be careful who you let test because they can have their own agenda and stuff like that, and you have to set up a system where your agenda can't get in the way of the results. So we do a lot of we're not allowed to talk to people, and we're not allowed to tell them what we thought they did until they've already written down what they think they did. Then we'll maybe ask them about it afterwards when we've already got the raw data, and there's a load of complications you can get into where it becomes a whole other subject. But even 5 guys in a room, you just get them all to play your game. That's better than no guys playing your game.
And I think the game equivalent of minimum viable product is find the fun fast. So you know, and you don't need to go external to do that. You can have if you can't tell internal if your game's good, then you shouldn't be making games. But in terms of your question, which was how do you balance feature creep against budget, was it?
Yeah, profitability, making sure that you don't.
So, I mean, obviously you've got so much money you're going to spend on a project. I'm guessing everybody here does this, which is every month they put their costs into their spreadsheet against that project and see how much they're spending. And you just need to be ruthless. You just need to say, well, this needs to be finished in X weeks' time. Therefore, that feature I love is gone. I'm not doing it. You know, or we're cutting that back. You know, you can't spend money you don't have. So you just have to compromise. I have to be honest. The games development is one huge compromise, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You start with an idea of what you want to make, and what you get at the end is like some kind of shrunken, dwarfish version of your grand vision, which was nowhere near as good as you thought it was going to be. But you know, finished it. So what's next? Let's go to the next project. So.
I think there's like a writing term as well where it's like kill your darlings. So a lot of the time your favourite feature is the one you need to just chuck out the window because it's like you're obsessed with it, but no one else is, and it's eating your money. So you've got to just be like, people like these ones. These are the fun ones. We'll do all those, and maybe we won't do all of those. To be honest, if there's not enough time.
I think you've got to see the whole thing as a journey as well, and don't. One of the biggest things is don't think you're going to make one game that's going to make money. So the first game we made took us a year to get our money back on it. I think you should just see each game as a stepping stone towards. This is the first year we made a loss. Second year we made some profit. You know, year after made some more profit. It's kind of that stepping stone, just trying to keep moving forward. Don't think you're going to make the next hit game. Just it's like a war of attrition. I think, you know, I'm not really painting a good picture here, but it's like a war of attrition where you've got to be in it, you've got to stay in it and keep making the games, and hopefully one of those games will get enough traction that you'll be able to buy yourself a bit more creative freedom, but otherwise you're kind of, basically you just got your nose to the grindstone and keep developing the best you can within your budgets and within your talents as well. So.
The other thing about profitability is, like, it doesn't necessarily have to come at the start. A lot of people talk about you make all your sales right at the beginning. But for us on Steam, we make more per day just now than we did at release. And that's basically all through discounting, using the tools that they give you on the back end to essentially run your own sales. Because say you're in a market, there's like 500 products, right? No one knows who you are. So you do a discount, right? That at least gets you somewhere near the front. But everyone goes in, say, summer sale, but that's when everyone's on discount. So really there's still 500 people there. And like you're up against, say, Metal Gear, like Final Fantasy. I don't know why I'm naming games from the 90s, but you're up against them essentially. And like really, actually the best thing we ever did was just go, no, it's our birthday, we're going to do a sale then, and no one else is on sale. We did an update, so we got some visibility, and it's just trying to break through like that. And if you can do that, say a year afterwards, you can go much closer to profitability with a game that you thought was maybe like a stinker or dead or whatever. And I guess just don't give up on it if it doesn't make money straight away. It is attrition, and even your losers can make you, say, 60% of your running cost if you do a good job with them.
Cool, thank you very much. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you again to our panel, and thank you again to our lovely hosts at Henderson Loggy. I don't know if you guys have got anything you want to...
No, just thank you all for coming. Hope to see you back at some future IGDA events in the years ahead, and safe trip home.
Cool.